did fly better.
We're getting into it here. Battle on the Dunes is the map. Very open map. You have very little cover to work with, but it is there. Mostly, though, it's either a snipe or a charge that we see. It's generally nothing of the in-between. There isn't really any mid-game play. So, going with our loadouts here. First up, the Fancy. First ship for the Riders, piloted by Dementio. That's Daniel, I do believe. The right-hand wing is a Carronade and Artemis. Center is a Mercury field gun. And the left-hand side is a Flamer Artemis. We also have the Lib Clutter. Oh, they're doing double Mobula. Riders are doing double Mobula on this one. Luosi, the pilot of that. The right-hand wing is double Artemis. Center is Mercury. And left-hand side is Artemis Flare. Go ahead, Oracle.
For the Clamor, we have the Quackinator, a junker being piloted by Minigunner. On the port side, we have an Artemis and Hades with another Artemis on the front for a trifecta, and we have Gat Mortar on the starboard. And aboard the Bill Me Later, another junker being piloted by Enbarrett. This is how you pronounce it.
Enbarrett,
we have it. Yep. Enbarrett. We have an Artemis and a Hades on the port side, another Artemis on the front, with Gat Mortar on the starboard. So we see each team running very similar builds on their ships. Looks like we're going to have a pretty hefty sniping match, and these are not sniping ships to be messed with. However, we do have slightly different engagement ranges on them.
We do. Now, the big question here is who can focus who down first from that mid to long range distance that we're going to see. We have a lot of Artemis in this fight. We have a lot of that mid to long range firepower. Who can be more active and focused with it in the first place? So far, Riders have been a little bit more on the ball. They've really gotten out in first and really getting some firepower on that, on the other team. Apparently, we're hearing from Sunderland in chat. Nobody on the Quackinator, one of the junkers on the Clamor side of things, does not have a main engineer loadout.
Oh, look at this. Bill Me Later and Quackinator rising up. They're moving out of the way of those Merc shots. If they can rise up hard enough, they'll be able to get out of arc of those Artemi and easily the Mercury. Bill Me Later in a really good spot. Quackinator eating a lot of damage, though. The Bill Me Later has got to get fire going down on one of these Mobulas now.
They've drawn out the Fancy into the very open center area of the map, and now they're starting to push him back from the Lib Clutter, but the Quackinator losing a massive amount of armor very quickly, nearly losing all of his hull too. Armor going down again. One more shot right now from a Mercury to finish it. There it is. There's some America right there for you. First kill goes to the Riders.
However, Bill Me Later turning that Gat Mortar in on the Fancy. Forward Artemis hitting, but it looks like the engineers are a bit too busy with repairs right now. There we go. Gatling going out on the Fancy. Fancy losing its arcs, but it just rises up, uses that balloon to block a lot of that Gatling fire, and it just buys itself some time. Lib Clutter to move in closer. There is no arming time of that Merc and Artemis, so they don't need to worry about that at all. Fancy turning its forward guns on the Bill Me Later. Gatling going down, armor goes down on the Fancy, but they are well out of mortar range.
A couple of them are hitting, but only doing about half of the permahull, just about a third of the permahull in damage, whereas Bill Me Later losing their armor. Hull has taken about half of its damage so far before it comes back up. Lib Clutter focusing something fierce on that junker. I do believe Luosi wants blood in this. No, they're pulling back, actually. They're pulling back, just playing a little conservative now. By the way, update on the Holy Roman Army versus Sky Invading Rhinos game. Holy Roman Army won that, I believe, 5-1. Someone in chat will correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I do believe 5-1 was the end score for that.
So Lib Clutter and Fancy in this game right now, focusing down the Bill Me Later. Mercury not having too much trouble at all landing. Whoop, that one missed. But the Quackinator coming in here. Its hand has been forced, and now the Lib Clutter and Fancy have easy shots on it. This junker not going to survive the day. There it goes, 2-0 in favor of the Riders. Clamor making quite a few positioning mistakes here, and Bill Me Later is going to pay for it next.
They're being incredibly aggressive to the point where they're putting themselves into shot range where they simply don't have to in the first place. 3-0 in favor of the Riders. Clamor are just charging into their guns right now. Not a good situation for them. Oracle, why are they doing this in the first place? Why are they simply charging at the Riders like this?
Well, right now we're seeing the power of a Merc Double Artemis Mobula. I mean, one of the most powerful things is, you just face toward your opponent and you have a trifecta. You can approach them, you can move away. It's one of the advantages of a Pyramidion, but you have 3 guns instead of 2. You just have less speed on it. And you see, you have the longer range on these Mobulas, so they can just sort of backpedal as these Junkers are trying to approach and get within Hades range. But since the Mobulas are backpedaling, the Junkers never get a chance to turn their guns full arc and get a trifecta. We haven't seen a single Hades shot this game, and it's because the Riders have done better with their positioning and their distance.
This has been a situation of those 5 guns pointing forward are simply outpowering
6.
that 6.
Yeah, they're double Mobula. You have 4 Artemis, 2 Merc.
Oh, I'm just counting the singular guns on each Mobula. Like, you have 5 forward-facing guns on a single Mobula versus the trifecta that you can get on a Junker.
Oh.
And that trifecta hasn't even happened yet, really.
No, it's the range. Like, they're trying to approach, but they're shot down before they can get in Hades range, where their Hades is really effective. I mean, the Hades, pretty strong against the Mobula, but it doesn't matter if you can't approach. And now, with the clock ticking, the Clamor are taking a very defensive position inside, well, the Leviathan. Not something you usually see.
I'm not sure what their plan is for this, but the burden is definitely on the Clamor right now to get something done, because if Riders simply say, well, you're going to play defensive, we're going to sit back and let you come to us, we still win.
Yeah, like right now the Riders have no pressure. And they have very strong defensive ships, especially on Battle on the Dunes. As the Junkers approach, they can hit them with their Mercuries, even if the Artemis isn't in range yet. And then as soon as the armor goes down, like the Artemis, and the Junkers get too close, the Artemi are just going to shred them. One important thing to note is that these Mobulas, they've been flying pretty close together. They got a flank earlier on, but then they started flying together, and you saw how easy it was for these Mobulas to pick a single target, get 6 guns on a single Junker, and the Mercury is so good at shredding hull that armor. The Mercury is so good at shredding armor that as soon as it's down, the Artemi make quick work of the very low hull stat of the Junkers.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Considering the other guns you could be firing against a Junker, the Artemis is a relatively easy gun to hit with. And if you're hitting that hull, the armor's already gone down, it's going to do some pretty serious damage.
Well, the Mercury also nullifies one of the big advantages of the Junker. One of the advantages is, it has high armor, but it also has a very small hull, so it's very difficult to hit. But the Mercury is so accurate, generally doesn't have a problem hitting the armor. And so I think this double Mobula is practically built to fight these 2 meta Junkers.
Kind of curious what kind of information the Riders were able to get a hold of ahead of time, because they've done a very good job of preparing and knowing exactly what they go up against when it comes to a Ducks team. But this also strikes me more of a traditional Ducks style in the first place, whereas we were seeing more creativity and more interesting builds out of the Clamor. Really, this is very, very traditional for what the Ducks enjoy doing when it comes to competitive matches.
Well, it works very well. The meta Junker works very well against the other ships that are in the meta right now. The problem is, this Mercury double Artemis thing is very old. This is something that you saw right as actually the first Mad Hatters team came out. The Mad Hatters were the first ones to really use it in a competitive setting, and it worked very well. The meta changed, but now that it's like kind of come full circle, this is very, very strong again. The kill potential is so strong, the disable potential is so strong, and on a map like Battle on the Dunes, it works very well.
It with how open this map is, it's an incredibly strong combination. The Artemis has such an easy time hitting stuff on Battle on the Dunes. So far, the Ducks are still happy, the Clamor rather, are still happy to just sit inside the wreck and do nearly nothing. Bill Me Later has lost most of its guns for some reason.
Oh, we got a pause coming out. Delta Jug asking for one. Dementio disconnected. Ooh, that's bad.
Daniel, one of the pilots, the pilot of the Fancy, losing his connection.
Now we're going to pause real quick. Oh, someone got an achievement. No, right now, well, I don't see. I don't see much way that the Clamor can come back from this. They've really got. I don't think the riders feel pressured at all. You see, they're taking positions around the Leviathan. They know that they can get the first volley off no problem. And in these very precise sniping matches, the first volley is very important. So you see the Fancy watching off to one side of the Leviathan, the Lib Clutter looking off to the other. You kind of look, the Fancy, what kind of position is it taking? Okay, so it's more taking a
Sammy,
side position.
Sammy is commenting in our chat that he thinks the Junkers are purposefully destroying their guns right now for some reason. Is there any reason you can think of they would do that, Oracle?
Achievements.
Okay.
No, they're just hanging out. No spots during pause, please, says Alistair McBain.
Pauses are essentially time where nothing can happen.
Yeah, everyone's holding still. So right now, I can't think of anything the Clamor can do. I mean, the Clamor could try and take advantage of the over-aggressiveness that the riders sometimes show, but I think that's what they're trying to do. I think that the riders... the Clamor are assuming that the riders are going to try and move in and finish the game off. Definitely, you know, in that area where the Junkers really have the advantage. I mean, the Gap Mortar is going to be very strong against these Mobula. It's not hard to hit the hull of a Mobula. The problem is, the riders aren't playing the way they usually do. Like, the riders are usually extremely aggressive, but this time, they're happy to buy their time. And I got to give them props. I'm impressed. Like, fighting that nature to do what is tactically better.
So... What I'm gathering between what Sammy and Sunderland are talking about in chat and what's going on in game, Sammy thinks they're trying what's called a peach charge, which from what I'm gathering is a charge where all your guns or some of your guns are broken, but one hit away from being repaired and already loaded with whatever ammo you want.
Yeah, I get that. I get it.
It avoids disables while you're charging, but at the same time, I mean, is that going to work out well?
Well, part of the problem isn't, I'd say the really big problem isn't that the guns are getting disabled, though that is an issue. But that doesn't deal with the core problem, the problem that they're just getting killed before they can approach. Like, the gunners on the Fancy and the Lib Clutter are too accurate. I think that they could try. But you see, like, the Lib Clutter is keeping a pretty good distance away from that Leviathan. So is the Fancy. Like, just where they are right now. That might change. Let's see. 145 already gone. He says, okay, apparently he's getting back.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Daniel is coming back in game. So no worries about that. These disconnects happen every so often. It looks like it was a problem on his end, not a game issue. Once again, Sky Invading Rhinos versus HRA. HRA took them 5-1 in the first game of today's match. Looking over the rest of the schedule that we have available for you today as I pull up my documentation for that. We also have Glowwater Thralls versus DPA after this, and then Mad Hatters versus Overwatch here on our stream. And then next up over on Imagine 42 stream, Canyon Ambush, Zill's Merryman, as I scroll over here. Who are they playing? Versus Sacrilege. And then the Art of Warfare versus Black Flight Squadron. Both teams have no wins just yet. So, you know, one of those teams is going to get a win. And then Musosaurs versus Cake. See exactly who gets a win between those two teams. We are here, though. Clamor versus Riders. Right here, right now.
Yep. For now, apparently they're talking about a potential pilot change.
Yeah, Daniel still isn't back. Hillerton is here.
Hillerton.
Hillerton just joined the game.
Oof. And there goes any hope.
Wow. Ouch. That's not something the Clamor wanted to see. According to Sunderland in chat, the Clamor is ready for peaching. All guns are apparently one hit away from being rebuilt. I'm going to just do a quick, just got to double check on that. Yeah, all guns, if you individually select the ships, show that they are all one hit away from being completely rebuilt.
Mm-hmm. On pause. Here we go. Getting back in here. My question is are the riders going to move? Right now, you have the unpauses there.
Riders aren't moving just yet.
No, they're saying, like, lip clutter is lowered down a little bit. We do see, I think that Sammy was right. We have the Clamor moving out. The question is, are they going to be able to survive this charge? I mean, there are flares in these clouds. Quackinator and Build Me Later spotted out. Lip Clutter firing in on them. Fancy very quickly turning those arcs. Mercs coming in. Are they going to land the way they need to? Doing decently. These 4 Artemi shredding the armor pretty darn well. Armor down.
Quackinator's hurting bad. Armor is gone. Hull is taking some very serious damage. I don't think they're going to get a chance to get into brawl range. Quackinator is just losing way too much health. Armor is gone again. Build Me Later cannot get close fast enough to make this thing happen. Clamor could go down here 5-0. It's a charge of 1 versus 2. Build Me Later trying to get in close enough to Lip Clutter, but he's just charging straight ahead. Not much they can do. Build Me Later is pretty much done with.
Yup. Main engine's down. There's turning engines are down. There's one back up. Oh my god. There's no hole left on it. But this is going to be it. Build Me Later goes down. Each time.
5-0.
Each time, I was very impressed. The riders went for the main engine each time. As soon as that main engine went down, the mobility was gone. Those Mercs and Artemi were incredibly easy to land.